Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have a second Kayakasaurus model to review here on the channel, as I somewhat recently reviewed the Kayakasaurus Kayakasaurus, the terror bird. Well, we now have the second figure of the bunch that I purchased from him now to review, and I stated in the unboxing the first figure I was going to paint was the Protoceratops. Well, now I'm wrong times two, because I painted this one, the Tethyshadros, second, and I was really psyched about this figure because I don't have any Tethyshadros in my collection at all. I know Wild Past is intending on making one, but Kayakasaurus, which is funny, beat them to it by releasing his Tethyshadros, but it's hilarious to me because actually Kayakasaurus and Wild Past is working together. They are working together on a Scutosaurus release that will be coming out from Wild Past at some point. So it's also kind of humorous that the two people that would have released a Tethyshadros figure would also be Kayakasaurus and Wild Past, but they've released their own versions. So, regardless, anyway, now that I'm done rambling on, this figure was another figure again that I welcomed with open arms due to me not having any Tethyshadros figures in my collection, but just also because it was a really beautiful sculpt, of course, on the part of Kayakasaurus. So the paint here is, of course, the paint that I gave it. You would have to paint yours and paint it however you would like, but I felt like this was a pretty cool look as far as the paint scheme goes on the figure, and it's another really small figure. You can see here in my hands that overall it is pretty darn small, and that is again something that it could potentially be a plus for some people. I actually like it because it fits in my collection quite nicely without taking up too much room, but again, it's something that might be good for some people if you're just getting into painting. It's not a bad figure to pick up and paint just because of the fact that it is smaller. It's not going to take up as much time to paint, and I feel like it's a little easier to paint than something that's overly large. But again, the figure looks great. Honestly, I am in love with it, so let's go ahead and get a closer look at it right now. So looking up here at the head sculpt of our Tethyshadros, you can see lots of really nice detail is included in the head sculpt and a really nice overall appearance to the head sculpt. I think it is just absolutely gorgeous detail-wise. It almost has like a grumpy look on it a little bit there. You can also see back here on the back of the head, the ear is sculpted out. The beak up here on the front is really beautifully sculpted. Very nice detail included within that area. You can also see the nostrils are sculpted out up here on the snout, and the eye is really nicely sculpted as well. The detail in general, as far as like the skin texture and everything up here on the head of the Tethyshadros, looks really nice. As you move down into the neck, you can see some kind of hanging skin right here in the neck region. You can also see some nice detail and structure to the neck itself. The dinosaur has its head sticking out straight forward, so there's not really too much difference, honestly, between that side and this side that you're really going to see detail-wise. It's pretty much the same. Coming down into the body, you can pick up on the shoulder blade a little bit right there. I don't know if my paint is kind of drowning that out or not, but it is definitely there. You can also see some very nice detailing as far as like the skin texture throughout the figure. I've kind of tried to dry brush some of that detail out with a darker coloration, so I think it kind of pops a little bit more. Very nice sculpt as we move down the front limb here, really nicely done as far as that foot sculpt goes. Again, coming back into the stomach, you can see a little skin detail going on there with the skin kind of bunching up a little bit with this leg pushing into the stomach region. Some more really nice skin texture throughout the stomach region. You can get a good sense of the spinal column of the dinosaur up here on the top. You can also pick up on the hip bone a little bit right there. Some nicely defined musculature in the thigh and calf region. As we move down the leg, you can also see some nice creasing going on throughout the skin of the thigh and even here in the back of the knee. Coming down into the foot sculpt looks really nice as well. Beautifully sculpted out toes. Really nicely sculpted out nails as well. And again, those feet are really small. You can see how small that is standing in my hand right there on my fingers. So the fact that he's able to sculpt that out as nice as it is very impressive. And then we come back up here into the tail. You can sort of see the skin stretching off of the tail there as this leg is pulling forward. And we move out the length of the tail. The tail has a slight curve to it. Very nice realistic look, I think, for the tail. And then coming over to this side, there's honestly not too much difference because for the most part, the dinosaur is almost in sort of a neutral position where it just appears to be walking along, kind of going on with its day. This leg is in mid-stride, taking a step. This leg is planted, so there is a little bit more of like a tensing of the muscles here in the leg, which I think you can pick up on. You can also see the shoulder blade again right there. and then you can see the stomach region a little better over on this side compared to what we had seen on the previous side, due to this like being backwards a little bit further in comparison to what we see on the opposing side. So you have a little bit more of a view of the stomach, and the skin texture and everything that is included within the detail on the underside also looks quite nicely done overall. Again, you can see the hip bone a little bit right there, as well as the musculature nicely defined throughout this leg, just like we had seen on the previous side. Very nicely sculpted foot over here, and then we move out the length again of the tail. So overall, again, a very small figure, fits right in my hand, but an absolutely beautiful Tethyshadros, and I am so psyched to now have one in my collection finally. Again, just like his terror bird, you can see that the figure can stand really nicely, but of course this is a quadruped, so it's not as impressive that it balances as good as it does in comparison to the Kelenkin, the terror bird, but still, I did want to point out the fact that it can stand really, really beautifully on its own. As far as the size goes, again, it's pretty darn small. You're looking at about 4.5 inches in length, or around the 11.5 centimeter range. Roughly, I mean, it's somewhere in that range. For a height to the top of the head, you were looking at a little under 1.75 inches, or about 4.5 centimeters. For a size comparison, there is Mr. Papo T-Rex, the Attack Pack Colovosaurus, and Robert Muldoon from the Mattel Jurassic World toy line next to our Tethyshadros figure from Kayakasaurus. And I feel like size-wise, it's a little bit bigger, of course, than the terror bird, but still a really small figure. And I think next to these guys here, you should have a pretty good idea of that. But once again, just like with the terror bird, I feel like the smaller size really makes the sculpt even more impressive than it already was, and really is something that you kind of just have to step back and take a nice wide look at it and just sit there in awe and be like, wow, he really did a great job sculpting in a lot of detail on something this small. So again, that's kind of the feeling I get continuously when it comes to Kayakasaurus and the amount of detail he manages to cram into a smaller sculpt. And again, very, very impressive, I feel like, sculpt-wise on the part of this Tethyshadros, just like with the terror bird that we had seen previously. So this Kayakasaurus Tethyshadros is an awesome figure. Really, really beautiful sculpt. But before we even talk about the sculpt, I just want to state that it is incredibly awesome that Kayakasaurus has created a Tethyshadros, because again, it's a pretty obscure species of dinosaur that nobody ever for some reason seems to take a chance on, except now Wild Past is as well. But until Kayakasaurus and Wild Past finally got around to making some, nobody ever did as far as I know of. There may be a Kyoto somewhere that I'm unaware of, but honestly, I have not seen a Tethyshadros figure ever, so the fact that Kayakasaurus made one had me immediately sold on the figure and really excited, and I definitely wanted to get a hold of it, and was kind of hoping to all the way up until the point where I finally was able to place an order for one. But again, definitely a very, very welcome addition to my collection, and I was super happy with the purchase. Again, the sculpt is beautiful, really nice, peaceful looking sculpt. As far as the dinosaur just kind of walking along, it doesn't look like it's in any kind of like a scared position. It's not running, it's not sort of like defensive or anything like that. It honestly looks like it's just walking along, maybe looking for some vegetation to eat, or maybe trying to keep up with its group that it's currently hanging out in, maybe its family, whatever the case may be. It's a very peaceful looking sculpt, aside from the fact that the head itself has almost a grumpy look on it a little bit. He just kind of looks like he's having sort of a bad day. Maybe he's trailing behind his family and he's really mad that he can't catch up to them. I'm not sure, but definitely a really nice look, I think, to the figure overall as far as the positioning of the body and the pose goes. The fine detailing as well, again, super, super impressive on something this small. It is a really small figure, so the amount of detail that Kayakasaurus has crammed into this is super impressive if you ask me, and it was a ton of fun to paint the figure. Again, with detail as nice as you find on these figures, they almost paint themselves, so it's always really fun to be able to paint something as highly detailed as you find with these Kayakasaurus figures, because they really just kind of, again, paint themselves, which is definitely something that I feel like is great, especially if you're new to painting, because it allows you to Make sure that your paint jobs don't look bad. When you're just getting into it, you're just learning it, it'll still, honestly, it'll probably look pretty darn good no matter how bad of a job you do paint-wise, because the sculpt is so good, it's going to shine through the actual paint job, and I feel like that's kind of what's happened here with mine. So again, a really, really nice looking figure on the part of Kayakasaurus. So if you would like to pick this up, make sure you head down to the description, as I will have a link to his Etsy store. Again, have some patience if it is not there initially. It does tend to come back because he has to make them all on his own. It's a one-man job on the part of Kayakasaurus, which is very impressive, I think. As far as these figures go, it's all done by him, so you just have to have a little patience. If they're not there currently, they will come back when he gets some more created. So make sure you do pick this up when it is in fact in stock, and make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.